Well, there's reports today that there's an urgent hiring spree for Nauru Detention Centre after a boatload, or potentially two boatloads, of migrants landed in WA. Job ads have been placed for an accommodation manager and multiple welfare and security officers. This is perhaps starting to feel like 2010 all over again, when it was at the start of the Rudd and Gillard governments struggling to stem the tide of boat arrivals. And now it's Anthony Albanese, who insists his government shouldn't be held to account for the dozens of asylum seekers who arrived over the weekend, saying it's an unfortunate event, but not his fault. And he claims, and Peter Dutton disagrees, that Operation Sovereign Borders is still in place. Have a look at what the Prime Minister had to say.
We need to make sure that we send a strong message that people who come in an unauthorised fashion won't be settled in Australia, and that is what we have done. Operation Sovereign Borders is in place. It is important that we're able to have regular migration. We want to see an increase in the number of refugees who are taken by Australia.
All right, let's bring in now our Wednesday night political panel. National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie and Labor MP for Fraser, Daniel Molino. Welcome to you both. Daniel, these job ads, do they indicate that Labor's expecting an influx of asylum seekers? The job ads for Nauru Detention Centre, I should say.
Well, hi, Sharri, and thanks for having me on. And hi, Bridget. Look, no, and I think I take a step back here, and I think for me the key thing is that the government is committed to the elements of Operation Sovereign Borders that both parties went to the last election with. And not just that, in our budgets that we've put in place to date, we've increased funding for that by almost $500 million, by $470 million over the forward estimate. So there's really no policy gap between the parties, but you wouldn't know that from the way the Leader of the Opposition is, frankly, in a way that's highly irresponsible, going around and almost being a cheer squad for the people smugglers. It's really not a very edifying way for him to deal with this very important issue.
Bridget, there has been this claim from Labor that Peter Dutton, in highlighting the flaws in the government's national security approach, is a pull factor in asylum seekers and people smugglers. What do you think about that?
Well, what I do know is what is incredibly unfortunate is that this government's approach to border security is failing. We've seen boats arrive. We've seen them being caught short now. Staffing arrivals, they've made changes to temporary protection visas. And all of this is a signal to people smugglers, irrespective of what Peter Dutton and the opposition say. You know, those boats were on their way before we were criticising the government's approach. And let's remember, these are the jokers that last time they were in government, we saw 50,000 illegal arrivals, over 800 boats and 1,200 people die at sea. And I just think Australians need to be very, very cautious about anything this government says on border security, because they clearly don't have a plan.
Look, the Prime Minister today insisted that he will see out the full term in government. There was a leaked memo revealed by Sam Maiden at news.com. The memo was from Albanese's Chief of Staff, Tim Gartrell, where he used language that referred to this as an election year. The Prime Minister says it's a complete beat-up. Daniel, has the Prime Minister reassured Labor members of caucus that he does plan to serve a full term and only head to the polls next year?
Well, Sharri, I had a look at that memo, and the way I read it was that it basically said something along the lines that there'll be an election at some point within roughly the next 12 months, which is kind of what we all knew anyway. So, look, I didn't read it as being anything particularly new. And look, I think the PM went out just to clarify things today and made it clear that he fully intends to serve out the term and intends to hand down a couple of budgets, which you know, I think is welcome. So I didn't see anything new in that, the way I read it.
Look, I actually think the more interesting thing about that memo is, you know, and I agree the language could be taken either way. He did say, as we enter an election year, It doesn't necessarily mean the election will be this year, although it could be. But I think the more interesting thing about the memo is that it was announcing the return of David Epstein, who was a key figure in the Rudd government. The fact that Albanese is revamping his office in such a major way at the top, we've got Fiona Sugden, who was also a senior media advisor for Rudd and Gillard. We've got The Guardian journalist Catherine Murphy, who's come in, and now David Epstein. Bridget, this has got to indicate that Albanese is concerned about how his office has been operating. It can't be anything else.
No, it can't be anything else other than getting geared up for a campaign and making sure your office and all the comms that are coming out of PMO are match fit for an election year, as his Chief of Staff outlined in the memo. I think the Prime Minister will go when it is politically expedient for him to win the next election. And I think he can make all the weasel words he likes heading into this year. He will go when he thinks he has the best chance of winning. And he has started off the year making sure that he's not ruling out going out towards the end of this year. So I think we need to be prepared for an election going forward. He's also tried to say he wants 4-year terms. Well, I don't think after the first 2 years Australians want to wait 4 years for more damage to be done by this government and the chance to vote them out.
Look, he has said pretty strongly that we're not going to the polls this year, but maybe we shouldn't all be getting an arm tattoo on that point just yet, because we have had other broken promises just recently. Now, you would have seen this story, or you might have heard about it, that the federal government has issued new dietary advice related to climate change. Well, now farmers have today come out saying that they're concerned about this advice, that it could fuel an ideological war on red meat. The new guidelines include the climate impact of various foods, and there's concerns from some that consumers could be advised to reduce their red meat intake to help reduce emissions. Daniel Molino, are you going to be following your own government's climate food advice and turn vegan?
Well, I was hoping you'd start with me, Sharri, because I was going to preface my answer by saying that I'm definitely a carnivore, and I must say in a household which has welcomed an 8-week-old dog in late November who's grown from 4.5 to 21 kilograms in about 16 weeks. That wasn't all on vegetable leaves.
Wow.
So can I just say that...
That is an expensive dog with a lot of meat eating.
Oh, but it's well worth it. Look, I think this is a bit of a storm in the teacup, I think. I saw the Australian story, and this is a consultation process that I understand started under the previous government. And look, I think it's a pretty wide-ranging consultation process, and it's looking at a whole range of issues and what information should go to consumers. And look, I'm very confident that I'll be enjoying a good steak both before and after the release of these guidelines. I mean, my general principle is that more information's better so long as you don't overload consumers. And let's let this process play out before we jump at too many shadows, I think.
Bridget, I mean, are we going to see kind of warnings like we do in cigarette packages, but on chicken and meat in the supermarket for climate change?
Yeah, absolutely, Sharri. I mean, Daniel talks about information. Well, to make sure it's factual. I mean, the fact is human beings didn't get to where we are on the pyramid by not eating a hell of a lot of red meat protein. And our farmers are so sustainable in how they produce that. And for us to be teaching young people, nutrition guidelines are taught in schools, so no matter what is done in the Molino home, his kids are going to be taught that it is less sustainable, it is worse for the environment for children to be eating red meat. And without taking into account how that livestock production is occurring, you're actually missing out on a whole lot of environmental benefits, such as the soil carbon sequestration. I don't think we can save the planet by starving it, and this is exactly the type of ideological wokeness that we don't need to be seeing part of public policy, because it actually impacts people's livelihoods, and that being our primary producers and the supply chains that they rely on.
All right, Bridget McKenzie, Daniel Molino, great to have you both on this evening. Thank you.